MK Simcha Rothman is a member of the National Religious Party and serves as the chair of the Knesset's Constitution, Law, and Justice Committee. He rose to prominence 2 years ago during the Judicial Reform protests, where he supported Justice Minister Yariv Levin's controversial plans to overhaul the judiciary. Today, as the war begins to wind down, Rothman is back in the headlines, this time advocating against the establishment of a Palestinian state between the river and the sea, pushing for accountability measures to investigate the Attorney General, and considering the revival of discussions on judicial reform, despite the near civil war that eventually sparked as a result the first time around. I'm Maayan Hoffman, executive editor of ILTV, and this is the ILTV News Podcast. Let's get started. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Now, the Knesset's Land of Israel Caucus, I want to start with that, is really pushing for this Israel security law. The first discussion started this week. This is a law that would require at least 80 MKs to approve any agreement involving territorial concessions, including those in Judea and Samaria. The law aims to block the creation of a Palestinian state in future negotiations. It would also expand Israel's referendum law, is what I understand. Now, tell me, why are you pushing for this right now?
So first, this, you see, Land of Israel Caucus, that's our sign. So if you see someone in the Knesset going with this is our badge. And I am one of the chairs, together with a member of Knesset, Yuli Edelstein. He is the chair of the Security Committee, and a member of Knesset, Limor Sonar Melech, also a chair of a committee in the Knesset. But it's the largest caucus in Israel. And it's not the first step we are pushing forward, trying to block, if you will, any talk or any idea of a Palestinian state. In this Knesset, and the Land of Israel Caucus is very active for many years, even before I was a Knesset member. But in this Knesset, we passed few bills and resolutions with this idea in mind. The first thing happened was canceling the disengagement from northern Samaria. That was in the first month, I think, in the Knesset. It passed, and the lights are again in this Chanukah, in this festival of lights. You have the lights of Chanukah in Chomesh and in the northern Samaria after it was taken out during the disengagement. So this was the beginning in this Knesset. We passed a resolution last July with 80 Knesset members supporting it, saying no to a Palestinian state, full stop, which was actually the first time since Oslo Accords that the Knesset had said the path that was laid upon us by the Oslo Accords, by pressure from outside, by some administrations in the U.S., by pressure from the Europeans and other countries, is leading nowhere. It's the path for another October 7th. And this claim and this resolution by the Knesset that was passed in July was after a long time working to get support of coalition and opposition to get to this understanding that October 7th did shook many people who was playing with the idea of a Palestinian state to go to that direction. And now this is like the last, if you want, the last leg of this approach, saying the same way the government, the executive branch, cannot decide to give away Jerusalem without a referendum or 80 Knesset members, or the Golan Heights without a referendum or 80 Knesset members, or any part of what we should call smaller Israel within the Green Lines. You cannot give this land to anyone without a referendum or 80 Knesset member support. We want to extend it now that everyone understands the dangers of a Palestinian state, especially so in such a close proximity to our cities, to our communities, to extend this protection also on Judea and Samaria, saying in Judea and Samaria, the state of Israel cannot create a Palestinian state in agreement or any way, in any way, other way, or to give the land to any other country without this referendum mechanism that already in the law books, but just extends now to Judea and Samaria.
Now, wouldn't it also extend to territorial waters? I think I read that. So what happened with Lapid wouldn't be able to happen either with
yes
Hezbollah
and yes and no, because territorial waters, that was it's already been said by the court that it applies, but it wasn't so clear.
So
it's like to make it clear. It does not change the reality on territorial water. There is a question, and it will rise. What about areas extending beyond territorial water, like happened on with the agreement with Lapid, with the agreement in Lebanon, that was also taking away a little bit of territorial water, but most of it was economical water, what you call. But that's more of a clarification.
Sure. So now the next question then is about Saudi Arabia, right? Because if you pass this, if this moves forward, now I know we're just in preliminary discussions, but let's assume, like your other in July, it passed with 80 Knesset members. I hear it's going to be probably a similar situation, gauging by who's in the current Knesset.
And it's important to say that the request for the committee to push forward this legislation came from all parties in the coalition, but also an opposition party, that Lieberman's party, Israel Beitenu party, that asked for it, and also a member of Machaneh Mamlechti, of Gantz party, also came and said he supports anything that will make sure that we are not going toward a Palestinian state.
So then what happens with Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia is obviously on the top list of Trump's accomplishments he wants to see happen over the next 4 years. The Saudi Arabian kingdom has said, well, we're not going to move forward with any peace agreement unless there's some path toward a Palestinian state. We're essentially saying there is going to be no path toward a Palestinian state. How do you reconcile?
Because I know that President Trump approaches international negotiations in a way that I appreciate personally, and to look at it as a business negotiation. And I think that's the right way to approach. But in any negotiation, you say in the beginning what's not on the table.
Okay.
Once 80 Knesset members in Israel, and actually 99 Knesset members voted already in February saying no to a unilateral declaration of a Palestinian state. But once 80 Knesset members, representing the vast majority of the public in Israel, said loud and clear that the Palestinian state means the destruction of the state of Israel, it cannot be on the table. So you can find any other solution, and I know that in the past, Trump administration and other people who were involved in it offered very creative ideas. Once you know what's not on the table, it clears the negotiation to try to find solutions that are viable, that will not mean the destruction of the state of Israel. I think that even the Saudis, when they will understand, and it will become very clear in a basic law, that the Palestinian state is not on the table, a peace agreement with the Saudis that we all want will be, they will understand that you cannot ask for a peace agreement, something that we see as a destruction of the state of Israel.
Right,
you want to have peace with us. You don't want to have a destruction of the state of Israel. So let's talk about this.
It's fascinating. Now, do you think the international community in general will respond to the passing of such a bill in a positive way? I mean, I feel like we already have a lot of international pushback. Not that we can control the rhetoric here in the world, but this is going to only feed that fire of, oh look, now we don't want to even talk about everything from the 67 borders.
So again, I think that when you cave under pressure, you invite more pressures. Once you clear you make your statements very clear, and you say, this is, for us, this is the destruction of the state of Israel. A Palestinian state is not on the table. We are not going to negotiate.
Is it never on the table?
Never. Because a Palestinian state, especially when you can talk about security problems. You can talk about justice. You can talk about the historical ties that if Israel, the homeland of the Jewish people, will say, yes, we are the homeland of the Jewish people, but we are giving away Shiloh and Bethel and Hebron and all the places that where the reasons that we chose this area to begin with, we're giving it away, then it does not make any sense. If you are not holding Jerusalem, if you're not holding Hebron, if you're not holding Shiloh and Bethel, you have, and that's the plan of our enemies, you have less justification to hold Tel Aviv. Because Tel Aviv can be built anywhere.
Right.
But Jerusalem you cannot build in any other place. Haifa, you can there are a lot of places with wonderful sea and harbor and mountains. There is only one Jerusalem. So this is important to say, also for security reasons, also for historical justice, also because we are the indigenous people of the land of Israel. And we cannot take away our heartland from our land. It does not make any sense. Once you say to the world, either the world accepts it or not, but it doesn't matter, because we know that even there are many countries in the world, even after October 7th, many UN entities, even after October 7th, that were turning the blind eye to justice, to what is right, to what's very clear, and you have October 7th deniers, even despite the fact that you have it all filmed with a GoPro camera.
By Hamas themselves.
By Hamas themselves, and published by Hamas themselves. So hiding away from the truth does not create more truth.
Yeah.
It creates more lies.
So let's talk about Judea and Samaria then. What is the plan? What is your vision? Are we going to annex it? Where do you see it going from here? What's the long-term vision?
So first, annexation requires that it would be from another country. Judea and Samaria does not belong to any other country. So annexation is not the right term.
Okay,
we should apply sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. Now, what to do and what are the ways to do it? Actually, the Land of Israel Caucus is planning to have a series of events exactly talking about, okay, Palestinian state is off the table. What's on the table? So we have Friedman proposal that was
Jewish state.
And you can talk about Bezalel Smotrich introduced a program in 2017. You can talk about the INSS has a program. Everyone has a program. Everyone has a plan. And you can learn from the world and you can learn from what happened in other places. But one thing must be very clear. You cannot have a Palestinian state in
But what's your
Israel.
vision? We apply sovereignty. What does it look like if you could have your way? What would we be doing?
I think, personally, I think Friedman program makes a lot of sense.
And just so our listeners, know what it is, maybe just give us
it basically says apply sovereignty on the land, and then there is no problem rising directly from it. And then people ask, okay, so what about voting? What about what would you do with the population? And Friedman shows in his book, which is also a beginning of a solution. It's not like TwoState Solution does not solve anything. So people are saying, okay, so what's your solution if not TwoState Solution? So I say, because TwoState Solution works so wonderful. Now you ask me how my solution will work. But I'm saying what Friedman says and what exists in many other countries in the world, that the fact that, for example, the United States has control and sovereignty over Puerto Rico does not mean that people from Puerto Rico are voting for Senate or in the way the people from New York do. It does not go exactly together. There is no equal sign. So there are, and also there is the Emirates program of Moti Kedar, Professor Moti Kedar. Many solutions will rise, but now the world and the state of Israel, we have to admit, in the past 30 years, basically blocked any other ideas. There is the Jordanian options and many other options. But we blocked any other idea by talking about the wrong idea of two-state solution.
Well, I think we were sort of forced to talk about it. The United States has been for, the last decades plus saying, okay, this is the solution, two states.
We have good excuse why you have done it. But
it's time
it does not prevent the reality. And the reality is that if you put all your money on two-state solution, which is not two,
then
not
you
a
will
state,
never have
not
a solution.
you will never have any other solution rising.
Well,
not from grassroots solution, and can be different solution for Samaria, and different solution for Judea, and different solution for the Bik'ah, because the Jordan Valley is almost 100% either empty or Jewish communities. Very few Arab communities there. So you can, and that's why the former Trump administration said, okay, so apply sovereignty there. It does not create any problem, not even with population. Maybe other places create different solution, but we must take this idea of two-state solution that was basically poisoned the minds of the entire world, which again was never a solution. Was never planned as a solution. It was only planned to be the first step of the destruction of the State of Israel by the people who created it.
Unbelievable. I think the language is going to change, as the Trump administration comes in. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. I read David's book, and I've spoken to him many times, and the idea of the one Jewish state is really the idea of giving the Palestinians autonomy to self-govern themselves within pockets, within the you're not going to rule them per se. You're going to give them all the benefits, but they're not going to be voting in, as you said, like our Knesset or for our prime minister. It's Puerto Rico. It's Puerto Rico. And the language will shift, because I think that is, as you said, the two-state solution is sort of just not, it's not working. And October 7th is what proved it to us, because if the rewarding terrorism with the state is the answer, then clearly it is the destruction of the state of Israel.
And also I say, this is the idea of decision 181 of the UN basically also said you do a partition plan. Doesn't matter where it goes,
right?
But then you have a Jewish state, an Arab state. But the partition plan that was done before was that the Jordan will be the Arab state.
Right. There's no Palestinian state, right? No, 100%. But now in recent weeks, there's been pretty significant escalation in Judea and Samaria. We're seeing, first of all, very interesting, the Palestinian Authority sort of taking action and trying to get some control over Jenin and some of the areas that they already, are supposed to be handling in Area A. But we're also seeing a lot of increased settler violence. I mean, there's been this incident in Hawara where the settlers actually even attacked the IDF. And I'm wondering, how do you respond to these actions by the Jewish youth that are living there, though? I mean, why do we continue to see these actions, these reactions? Why are we seeing further escalation in Judea and Samaria?
I don't think we see further escalation in terror towards Jews. That's definitely always we see. And again,
you think that's escalating as well?
That's escalating, not as well. That's escalating.
Okay.
Now, what quote unquote settler violence is a myth. Because you see people fighting even with police officers in Tel Aviv. You don't call it Tel Avivian violence. You don't say it. You don't say when you have a violent riot against the judicial reform and police officer was attacked, you did not call it leftist violence, despite the fact it was in a left-wing demonstration. And so language, as you said, Trump is getting language is very important in this matter, and the settlers, which it's a euphemism for Jews living in their ancient homeland, they are less violent than any other group in the world.
Really?
There is more violence in New York. There is more violence in Chicago. There is more violence in any major city in the U.S. against the police, even against the police. And so it's, and many times, there are fights over territory, between an Arab shepherd and a Jewish shepherd. Okay, no one justifies a fight. You should always call the police and alert the authorities, but there is a fight sometimes, and it happens between people, even from the same nation. Even between Arabs, there are fights. If Arab and a Jew is involved in the fight of who will go in this direction and who will move to the side on the road, someone will say, "Oh, it's a settler violence." I don't accept this term. And when I ask the authorities, please if you want me to believe it's a real problem, and some people are there to compare it to terror.
Wow.
I want to please tell me. I will take it with the most serious way. Just tell me how many Arabs were killed because of Jewish settler violence, quote-unquote settler violence in the past year, 2 years, 3 years?
Zero. Really?
Zero. So if that's the case, I'm not saying violence is okay. I'm not justifying violence. I'm not saying the police should investigate, but don't try to create an equal sign between murder attempts that sadly succeed many, many times toward Jews just because they're Jews on their ancient homeland to some youth. I'm not justifying it, attacking someone on the street or attacking the police, something that you can see in any street in any main city in the United States.
Do you know off the top of your head, and maybe you won't, and I didn't talk about this with you in advance, but how many Jews in Judea and Samaria have been murdered in the last year by Arab violence?
The number is, I think, two digits. Don't
two
ask
digits.
me
Yeah, I know. I feel bad to bring it up.
Directly the number, but of course, if you look on a decade, we're talking about hundreds.
Well, that's of course.
But, and again, how many Arabs? Zero. If you even include the terrible thing that happened in Duma,
right,
and you will have 2 or 3 for the past 2 decades. Like, it's terrible, but it's not.
Right.
It's not a thing. It's something need to be investigated as a crime. But definitely, there are more Jews that are attacked because there are Jews in any country in the world than Arabs that are attacked because they are Arabs in Judea and Samaria, near the most violent settlements.
Do you think that the Trump administration will remove the sanctions that Biden has been putting on the individuals and the organizations in Judea and Samaria?
I'm sure he will, because it's an act of violence by the Biden administration. It has zero justification. I even know of a case of an American citizen that was sanctioned because, quote unquote, he's a violent settler. He's an American citizen. He was in the IDF from October 7th until today. He was recruited to reserve. He did nothing unsanctioned. Like, he was acting as an IDF soldier protecting people. And he was sanctioned by the U.S. administration for acts that supposedly has been done when he's in active duty. And he was with zero criminal record, with zero criticism, even by the most left-wing people in Israel or outside. Just the fact that it's so easy, some anarchist in Judea and Samaria, left-wing organizations that are funded sometimes by actual groups with ties to terror, giving a name to the Biden administration to some guy, and this guy gets sanctioned. Crazy. I'm sure that anyone with truth and justice in his heart should cancel it. Definitely Trump administration.
So I want to jump to a totally other subject. Judicial reform. It's been a real lightning rod for controversy, in the country. Certainly before October 7th, we saw protests, as you mentioned, in the streets, left wing, right wing. People said we were on the cusp of a civil war, God forbid. And I've heard that you're planning to revisit the discussion. Is that true? And if so, when is this coming back on the table?
So I think that since the beginning of the war, everyone in the coalition, and Justice Minister Yariv Levin included, and myself included, said, if we don't need to do it during a war, no need to do it. It's better to focus the efforts of the nation on the war. Yeah. We have hostages, we have everything. We need to focus, and I think that was a good decision. I'm not regretting it, but and in the beginning, it was widely accepted even by the courts, even by the Attorney General. They also understood during war it's not a time to fight with each other.
100%.
This understanding basically vanished from the court's behavior. It was vanished from the Attorney General behavior in the past few months. We have few events at the same time where we see that for whatever the Chief Justice of the court thinks, the war is over because he's trying to push forward. One of the issues on the table is the Judicial Selection Committee. Right. We offered to amend the Judicial Selection Committee. By the way, even people who in the beginning criticized the systems that Yariv Levin offered, when they saw the final product that is waiting to be voted in the Knesset after the work that has been done in my committee, in the Constitution Committee. They said, okay, we objected in the beginning, now it's okay, or it's not so bad. The most famous one of them, Professor Alan Dershowitz. I sat with him. In the beginning, he said it's a bad program to amend the Judicial Selection Committee. After we finished the job, I sat with him in an open public debate. I explained to him what's on the table. He said, okay, no, for that I'm not objecting. It's a good idea. It's even better than the system in the United States.
Wow.
Okay. So the work has been done. But okay. But we said, so Yariv Levin, Justice Minister Yariv Levin, he said, because I don't believe this committee should exist, we need to amend it. I'm not calling meetings. And that was before October 7th. October 7th broke. And Yariv Levin said, okay, because we're not changing now the system, so let's try to work together, but I have one condition. All appointments should be unanimous. So we should agree, and if something is controversial, let's put it aside.
Okay.
And in this way, they appointed 162 judges, not a small number.
That's huge.
Yeah. And suddenly, the justices decided, no, we will push forward that Amit will be appointed, and we will push forward controversial appointees for other courts. And Yariv Levin said, okay, so if you're breaking the agreements, then nothing. So they said, no, we will give you an order from the court that you will have to sit and basically become a puppet. You are a justice minister. According to the basic law, you are the chair of the committee, but we will tell you what to do, when to vote, why to vote. No, it's illegal in any way. And Yariv Levin said, it's illegal, but even in that, I'm not fighting. I will meet, but I will do it in my own pace. We'll have a hearing, but you're not going to force me to vote in a day. Now the court said, no. You will vote until January 16th, where January 16th exists in the law books or in any other rule. I don't know. They don't know either. It's their decision. They think it's their decision. So if the court is trying to create this kind of a constitutional crisis, I think the Knesset and the justice minister should think maybe to put it back. And that's what Yariv Levin said. If that's what you're trying to do, I will push forward the legislation that has been waiting for more than a year. I did not push it forward, and I'm willing to wait, but I'm not willing that you will. I cannot agree that you will use the war to use the war for your advantage. If we are in a truth, then let's keep the truth.
Wow. So we really don't know if it's going to move forward yet or not, is basically what we're saying at this stage. It's very hard to know. There's definitely a growing trend, though, in Israel to be more, I would say, on the side of the center right. The right wing is growing stronger. We saw when we were even polling for the American election, that 99%, I think, by the Israel Democracy Institute, of the youth, of the younger Israelis, were pro-Trump and pro a more conservative agenda. Do you see this as something positive for the country? Is this taking us where you think we need to go?
First, as a I would say conservative, not Jewish conservative politically, a Knesset member, in whatever that means in Israel. Of course, I see that if more people see the world the way I look at it, I prefer. Israel is a very conservative country in that matter. National security-wise, and very strong family values and families, and even our progressives are more conservatives than most conservatives in the U.S. We are so this is more of a social distinction in Israel than the actual policy, and I think it's good. I think that in this neighborhood you cannot be too cautious. You should always be alert on national security. You should always be alert that you will have strong communities and strong families, because that's what keeps us alive, actually alive. If people will not feel the need to jump in the middle of the night from their beds and go down to the south to save their friends, families, and their community, we won't survive October 7th. We wouldn't have. So it's for us. It's not a privilege. We have to do it. It's not something nice to have. And I think the public in Israel understands it, and I think it's good for us.
Well, so, I mean, do you think that Trump's election is also sort of a cry toward moving in that direction in the United States? I mean, I know you're obviously not American, but it was very interesting, the popular vote, I think, in the United States, and trying to compare and contrast between the way the voting happened last time we voted in Israel, that brought in the current administration, which is certainly the furthest center-right government we've seen in probably decades. And, in the United States, to see so many people, not even electoral votes, people coming out to vote toward conservative. Do you feel that this is like a shift in the West, that we're sort of taking back religion, taking back conservative, or let's call it, in God we trust values?
I'm not an expert in American politics and demographic changes. I know that Israel is unique in that conservative values are stronger with the youth. In that we're unique. And we are also unique in that Israel is the only country in the OECD with a positive growth due to birth rate and
is that largely though still Haredim and Arabs?
No. Even secular Jews are. I think their average is 3.
Okay.
When most Western countries are less than 1,
Right.
no, not less than 1.7, definitely less than 2.1, which is the minimum needed to keep your population at the same level. So Israel is growing, and young people are more conservative than the old people. So we're going toward more conservative worldview, which I think is good. In the United States, I think the youth are more progressives. So I don't know how it will affect over the years, but that's the polls. And I think that the more people see where woke culture is bringing the world, you will see more people coming back towards conservative values. That's my view. I think we see it in Europe. In the U.S., it will take longer because, again, I think it's a level of threat kind of question, because there is a saying among us conservatives that everyone is conservative about the things he understands, and everyone is progressive on things that he does not understand. And once you understand the threat for your culture or for your civilization existence, and you see it more closely, you're more conservative to keep it. In Israel, we see the danger every day because we are living at the edge of culture, if you want, and we see what's happening in our neighboring countries, and we see the collapse, and we see the jihadist extremists taking down regimes and areas like in Syria and other places. So we see it with our own eyes. We don't have the ability to ignore it. Europe starts to see it, and you see the change in Europe, and the U.S. also starts to see it, and you start to see the change in the U.S. And I think it's something that will grow.
There's so many more questions I can ask you, but we are really running out of time, and I'm just wondering, are there any final thoughts or anything you really wanted to share with our audience that I didn't get to ask you about?
I think we can talk on that. Also, we can talk for hours. But I think that I know that the audience of ILTV News and people are very care deeply about Israel, and
100%.
care and I think that what keeps Israel, and as the edge of the entire Western civilization, but what keeps Israel strong is the understanding and the support of our friends all around the world, and especially the ties to the Jewish communities around the world and the strong Jewish communities around the world. And so when you invest in your community strength, and we see also the change in the Jewish communities in the United States, we see they also started to see in the recent past the fragile reality that happens in campuses. It's happened in the streets. Back to the basics. Back to the understanding of what's important. with the connection to the land of Israel, to Am Israel, and to Torah Israel, I think that's the path that we should go.
That sounds wonderful. Well, thank you so much for spending the time with me today.
Thank you.